Stop, Kieren. Stop. That is already 2 intros you fucked up. I'm taking over. You're no longer the button pusher. Boop, 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 boop. Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu Podcast. I'm not joking. Kieren messed up 2 intros in a row. I don't know why. I'm not even letting him get a word in. Like, he's sitting across from me trying to Episode 120. Ask a black belt. Lots of questions to get through. I'm excited. Kieren, my man, what is up?
Hello.
You may now speak.
I didn't actually technically fuck up the second intro because no one could tell. But this is the Ask a Black Belt. I don't even know what we're up to. I think number 9. Ask a Black Belt 9 or 10.
Something like that because, for newer listeners, we do these episodes every 10 episodes, but there's been a few in between where like episode 50 was half century. Episode 100 was like our 100th episode. So we didn't do Q&As in those, but episode 120, next one will be 130. And so looking forward to it. Before we jump in, let me just quickly say something that usually I would say at the end of the episode, but a lot of the time people don't make it that far. The episode is labeled Ask a Black Belt, but that's just the catchy name of it. The questions don't need to be just specific to me, right? So you can send in, which people have previously done, if you got nutrition questions for Kieren or, S&C or questions about his course with Jordan or questions about fucking his time sailing a boat in the Navy, whatever, right? It's not just questions for me. That's just the title of the episode. It's questions for us.
Questions for anyone.
Yeah, but
everyone.
You're done talking. You're finished, Kieren.
Okay.
No. Yeah, we got quite a lot. So thank you everyone who submitted questions. Hopefully we get through all of them. We've put aside some extra time, so maybe it's going to be a longer podcast. We'll see how we go. We'll just chip away at it.
Chip away. 120.
Before we get in, I haven't seen you in a while because you're injured. Actually, coincidentally, I'm injured too.
Everyone's injured. Everyone's injured. You get an injury. Everyone gets an injury.
But I'm still in the gym because I have to teach.
You don't have a choice.
I have a very small grade 1 tear in my LCL. In my knee, which is fine, not that big of a deal. The LCL is not the ongoing issue, but I have an ongoing issue in that knee that I'm currently going to see a surgeon next week for. Coincidentally, tore my LCL in that same knee, but it's not too bad. More worrisome was that the MRI was they said, there's a lot of wear and tear in that knee for someone your age. I was like, man, what are you going to do? Jiu-jitsu. Your ankle is still a bit wrecked.
Yeah, it's still a bit wrecked. When I initially saw physio Nick, he said that, it would take 6 to 12 weeks. Like the medical timeline in studies for this type of injury is 12-week full medical recovery. We were trying to get me back to at least drilling in week number 2. We're in week number 2 now, or week number 3 even. But it didn't happen. Last week I tried to drill. It was a bit too sketchy. I was being a bit a bit sensitive on it. And so sprained ankle, nothing super serious. I should be back to drilling maybe toward the end of this week and maybe even rolling in another week or so.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get stuck straight in. If we do get through all the audio questions, I know we only take audio questions. I do feel sympathetic for one of our listeners who tried multiple times to submit an audio question, and he was messaging me back and forth, and he's like, man, my phone, I don't know what's going on, but every time I record it, it's then just, it's not recording. So hopefully if we get through these, I want to get to that question as well, because if he's had technical difficulties, I feel for the guy.
Makes sense. Okay, so first question is from Crissy, and it's about some mental preparation.
Hey guys, my name's Crissy. I am a blue belt out of Tacoma, Washington. I have a question. So I'm wondering, what is some good advice you can give for mental preparations for upcoming tournaments? I competed twice as a white belt, and I'm doing my first tournament as a blue belt. And even just thinking about it makes my heart start racing. So just wondering if you have any good recommendations for what I can start doing mentally to prepare for my tournament. Thank you.
Good question. That is a really good question, Crissy. Thank you for sending that in. So, some people really struggle with the mental side of competition. Some people, they don't, right? And it can be a make and break factor. You can have, I've trained with multiple people who have been in the gym, like they would just murder, previous, current and future world champions, but then themselves when they went and compete, like they would never even make the podium, right? Not because their jiu-jitsu wasn't good enough, but they fell apart on game day, so to speak. And it is a big side of competing, not just in jiu-jitsu, but in any sports. That's why there's sports psychologists. And, I think even back in the day, big names like Michael Jordan would call, Tony Robbins and whatever before a game. And so even big names struggle with the mental side of competition. But I can give you a few things that work for me. I think at the end of the day, you'll have to find a certain sort of thing that works for you. So obviously talking to Crissy, it seems like it's not just going to be the case of, you just one day get over it. And what I mean by that is some people just never have an issue with competition. The feeling that you feel when you feel, I could be wrong, right? Actually, but I've had this told to me from other coaches and I've read it, but I have not called a psychologist and fact checked this, right?
Let's get Jordan Peterson on the phone. Let's confirm.
But I believe the neurological feeling you have when you're nervous is the same as like adrenaline, but it's how your brain is interpreting those signals. So some people, like they get nervous, but like they interpret it as like adrenaline and excitement. And, I used to have training partners of mine in Brazil who they literally said, I love the feeling of being nervous. I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like nervous is a negative word, like, I mean, who likes feeling nervous?
Sadistic, bro.
Yeah. So obviously that's not the case for Crissy. So we need to find essentially some hacks that can help you negate some of those. So I'll give you some that work for me. And then we'll see if they're applicable for you and you might find what works. So some simple ones are just finding what state of mind you like to be in before you compete. And this is very common for a lot of combat sport athletes. So you'll come across a lot of people in jiu-jitsu, boxing, MMA or whatever who kind of embrace this hatred towards their opponent, even though they actually don't hate the person. That's their method of psyching up. They really have that angry look on their face. Like Merigali's known for that, like looking really pissed off and like he wants to hurt you and whatever. But that's just like the psychological sort of tool that they're using. Some people don't. Marcelo Garcia is known for kind of essentially, sleeping on the floor at ADCC, them calling his name, him not waking up and someone being like, bro, you're up. And he's like, oh shit, stumbles onto the mat, submits the dude, like not everyone needs to embrace that kind of real, like, you see those guys and girls at the tournament that are doing that whole, like, slapping their quads and their legs and their biceps.
And they do that big stomp thing.
Stomping. And so you might need to like embrace that character. That might be what works for you. Some people, like just being a bit more relaxed and chilled and not really, necessarily feeling like they have to hate the person. So that's one thing. There's a few other tricks you can do more leading up to the competition that's going to help your mental state going into it. The first is making sure you have good preparation. So this is going hand in hand with the psychological and the physiological side of it, that if you physically feel well prepared, right, you're going to mentally feel better about it because deep down if in your training camp to compete, you could have done more. Like that's just there's multiple areas that doubt can creep in from, but that's just one little area that you can, if you didn't really prepare well for this competition, that kind of already leaves you feeling not super mentally prepared for the competition. So having a good preparation, I think is key. I used to have a training partner who didn't necessarily have to cut weight to go down a weight division, but he always did. I said, why? Why don't you just, fight this weight? And he said for him, he did it because it it was a way that he knew that he was like committed and he had prepared properly and he had made sacrifices. And it's like the more you sacrifice for it, the more you want it, the more you're willing to risk for it, you know, and the less you think about the what ifs, in my experience. So a good preparation, right? As we lead up to the competition, I believe there's a lot of strength in like positive affirmations. So I don't mean you necessarily have to stand in the mirror every morning and say, love yourself. Right? You are worth it. Maybe it's Maybelline, right? You don't have to do all that. But I would personally do, because Crissy can relate with you a lot. I don't mentally feel that great about competition. I'm not someone who feeds off that feeling of nervousness. But so if I'm preparing for a competition, particularly a big one, I'll make a bullet points in my phone and I'll read them every day. And they'll say something along the lines of, have faith in your technique, or, sometimes I like to, let me give an example. You know how you see fighters, particularly more maybe in UFC, where there's like trash talking and all that. They'll say something along the lines of, oh man, like he's got no chance. I'm going to knock him out in the first minute, like blah, 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 blah. They don't necessarily believe that. It's just this kind of fake it till you make it, constantly putting that positive reinforcement in your mind. So the last super fight that I did, I told all my students leading up to it that I was like, man, I'll submit him in 2 minutes. And it wasn't a way of me taking a dig at him and saying, and then I would have people come up to me like, yeah, but man, like, he's a black belt too. Like, you got to respect the fact, like, and I'm like, yeah, I know all that. This is just almost a facade, a way of trying to force confidence into myself.
How many minutes did it take?
Unfortunately, 4 minutes, 3.5, I think. So I was, actually, during the match, once we were in it for a couple of minutes, I started being like, fuck, I got to submit him. I told everyone it would only be 2 minutes, So I do a lot of positive affirmation, and it doesn't have to be, here's a better way to put it. I essentially try to gaslight myself.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So I'll constantly, like every day, I'll read, you're fitter than them, you're faster than them, you're stronger than them.
You're Gordon Ryan.
Yeah, right. You're the best blue belt in Tacoma, right? You're the best. Whatever. Yes, I'm going to win pans. A lot of visualization, right? And I've said this multiple times on the podcast. One of my old training partners, Levi Jones-Leary, does a huge amount of visualization.
Yeah, I even had a note to reference Levi, because Levi spoke about that explicitly in episode 112 of this podcast when he was on with Alanis. And that's something that he really touched on and spoke about visualization. And if he's done it a million times in his mind, when he gets there, it's not new because he's already done it.
That's right.
In his mind.
Yeah, 100%. It's almost like a poor man's version of a flight simulator before you can actually go and fly a real plane. So I'll do a lot of visualization. So think to the competition, what are the most nerve-wracking parts? Like sometimes weighing in, right? But usually as a whole.
It's in the bullpen.
Yeah, it's that in the bullpen, or that standing on the mat waiting till the ref calls you on. Yeah. So, I'll on the daily leading up to the competition, I'll read these positive, essentially bits of doubt that creep into my mind. I'll then write the opposite of that. So if I have doubt of like, your guard's shit, I'll then write a positive thing like, you've got the best guard in Sydney or something, right? And so I'll read those daily, and then I'll do visualization. I'll literally just sit there and I'll visualize walking out onto the mat, shaking their hand. I'll visualize what my plan A game plan is. Pull guard, sweep to mount, armbar, whatever it is. I'll visualize stepping up on the podium, getting my medal. And exactly like Levi said, once you've done it a million times and you've gaslit yourself, there's almost no other alternative, right? That helps massively.
Oh yeah.
Another tip you can do, and this is a full-blown, psychology hack, is that it's proven that no matter how nervous you feel, to someone looking at you, you don't look as nervous as you feel, right? And it's proven that knowing the fact that when you're nervous, you're not perceived as being as nervous as you feel, knowing that fact lowers how nervous you feel, which I think is a crazy little psychological hack. So just simply knowing that it doesn't matter, Crissy, how nervous you feel, people don't look at you and think you're nervous, right? Or they don't think, if you're 1,000,000 out of 100 nervous, they might look at you and go, oh, she's 50 out of 100 nervous. Like you don't look as nervous as you're feeling. Yeah. And when you know that fact, that lowers how nervous you feel. So I think without crapping on too much more, they're the ones that oh no, sorry. And I do have one more. And another one, especially when you're just competing at blue belt or it's not a super fight, you don't know your opponent. So you can't prep for them. If you're at black belt and you're going to Worlds and you know that, whoever's in your division, you know that Mika Galval's in your division, you know the Rotolo brothers are in your division, you can have strategies and you can prepare for them if you were to match them. But when you're just doing a local competition or whatever, you have no idea who you're going to fight. People waste a lot of energy getting stressed out thinking, what if they do this? What if this? What if that? You can't think like that. You just can't go down that rabbit hole. There's nothing good there at the end. You have to instantly replace those thoughts with a positive affirmation or think about something else. What are you going to eat after you've made weight? Like it's kind of like when someone says, man, you can't sit there and, why just think about all the negative thoughts of that ex-boyfriend or girlfriend? Like you just can't stop thinking about that. It's not healthy for you. It's a similar sort of thing. So don't think about what they're going to do. They're just a grappling dummy. They're just the most sophisticated AI grappling dummy in the world. You've just got your game plan, and you're just trying to implement that. So maybe, Crissy, you play Spider Guard, right? Like you can't worry about what they're going to do. You don't know that if you pull them into Spider Guard, that your opponent is going to be standing there going, shit, Spider Guard is the one guard that I can never pass. I'm fucked. Or you don't know if you're going to pull them into Spider Guard and they're going to be like, haha, one of my training partners is the best Spider Guard player in the world and I'm just going to pass this like cake. Yeah. You don't know, right? So you can't waste time thinking about it. You've just got to have your game plan and try implement it. And if they're better than you, okay, they're better than you and they win. It changes, of course, when you're then looking at the person you're going to fight and you can prepare a specific game plan for them. But let me summarize those again, but they're the things that I think help a lot, right? So I do a lot of positive affirmations, a lot of visualization, making sure, reminding myself that I have faith in my technique, don't doubt your technique. If you're good at arm bars work, right? Don't psych yourself out being like, oh, but if I go for this, they're going to know I'm going for it. No, they're just a grappling dummy, an AI super advanced grappling dummy, right? And you're just trying to implement your game plan. If you have good preparation, that's going to help you a lot, right? If you need to assume some sort of character, if you need to get kind of pissed off to get psyched up, or does it work better for you being a bit more chill or relaxed, right? And shut out any of these negative thoughts. You can't even let that. It's hard. It's easier said than done, right? That's again why some of the most successful athletes in the world still have sports psychologists, because it's not easy to do, right? But I think that's what's worked for me the best in the past as someone who also can struggle with the mental side of competition. Like you said, Crissy, sometimes even just the thought of doing it, once you finally clicked the registration button for the competition and then whoom, these nerves but you just can't, even if you change the subject, play a video game, something, don't even entertain the negative thoughts. That's not healthy for you. And it takes discipline, but you gotta shut it out. You just have to go, no, even if you put your fingers in your ears and go, la, 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 like you can't. I'm not listening. Yeah, you can't let it in. Yeah. Give yourself some positive affirmations. Have faith in yourself, prepare well. They're just a AI grappling dummy. Have your game plan, right? And
man, you hit all the major points. Like I had 5 or 6 points and you nailed every single one of them.
In a very concise 20 minutes.
Yeah, literally 15 minutes.
Well, it's a big question,
It is,
right?
it is. No, it's good. And I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I think that the whole, like, don't think about your opponent, I would say take that one step further just to bring it to the modern generation. Don't look them up on Instagram.
That's also not healthy, right?
It's not healthy. I'm so guilty of this. I've given this advice, since like my third competition or whatever. And even from my bodybuilding days, it was advice that I adhered to, like, don't look them up, but I still do it. And not my most recent comp, but the one before that, I looked up my competition and just the first round guys, because, after that it doesn't really matter. And I found this one guy who posts a lot of like instructional content. He's a blue belt, but posts heaps of stuff on Instagram. Obviously, he wants to be a coach, and I think he teaches his kids class, and he has all of his game plan on his Instagram.
Yeah, right.
So I saw that he was going to pull guard because he has these competition montages, and every single time he pulls guard, I know his game plan. It's a shoulder crunch into a sweep, gets on top, and then goes for like a back take from out or whatever. So I knew he was going to pull guard, and I was like, yes. So go in, just get ready, pulls guard, boom, straight into a pressure pass.
Nice.
So that's the one time it helped me.
Yeah, because it's not really helpful usually because no one is posting the times they lose. It doesn't matter how shit they are. If they're posting they're only going to be posting photos of them looking massive in the gym, lifting weights, or photos of them taking someone down. And then even then, that's not necessarily a reflection of showing that they're good, especially if you're talking about looking up a white belt or a blue belt, a lower belt.
Yeah,
it might just be a reflection of how shit their opponent was.
Yeah.
No one's posting their bad stuff.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's like being traumatized from a breakup and then looking up your ex. They're only going to be posting photos of them having a good fun time.
Yeah,
they're not going to be posting the photos of them being sad, missing you too.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. Yeah,
all right.
And we all know as well, like in jiu-jitsu, if you just took on face value, like Mikey Musameshi, you would assume you could beat the crap out of him.
Yeah.
There's plenty of big jack dudes who are terrible at jiu-jitsu. We know that it's more than what someone looks like in jiu-jitsu.
Definitely. So let's go on to question 2, and this one is from Joe.
Hi, my name's Joe. I'm a white belt, and I have a question for Adam. So on one of the podcasts I heard, he had some bucket handle tears, one on the left and right knee, and he had surgery for these as they locked up. So that recently happened to me in training, and it fully locked. Couldn't straighten it at all, and it was locked for 12 days eventually. So I had it repaired, and it's kind of looking at the moment like a 6-month return back to jiu-jitsu. I'm just wondering, because obviously there's lots of people. I am a physiotherapist as well, so that should help a little bit. But there's lots of different ideas on return to jiu-jitsu and time that should be given towards it. And I'm just wondering, in terms of reoccurrence rates, I know these things can come undone. The good work of the surgeon can come undone if the right forces are applied at the right time. So I'm just wondering, were there any problems after the surgery? Was it a repair that Adam had, or was it taken out? So obviously if it's taken out, there's not so many issues, but it causes problems later on down the line. Hope that makes sense. But yeah, just wondering if there's any longer term issues that he had after the surgeries. Thank you.
All right, Joe. So I can speak from definitely a position of experience with this this question and this sort of injury. And we spoke a little bit about it in the episode a couple of weeks back with Nick, our physio, who was on. So quickly, just for people who are like, bucket handle tear, what the hell's that? They'll just give a quick summary of the injury that Joe's talking about. So in your knees, you have 2 of these things called meniscuses. You have a lateral meniscus and a medial meniscus, one on the outside of your knee, one on the inside, and they're essentially a layer of cushioning that sits in between the bottom of the knee and the top of the knee, right? And when a bucket handle tear, what happens there is, if you imagine the meniscus imagine it's like a sheet of paper that's sitting between the knee joint. When the knee joint bends, right, so essentially the joint is opening, sometimes you get this meniscus that is actually, I'm going to give you a better example. We've got a sandwich, okay, and we've got deli meat on that sandwich, okay, and your meniscus should be flush to the edge of the sandwich, right? So there shouldn't be like,
So is the meat the meniscus?
The meat's the meniscus.
Okay, the deli meat's the meniscus, and the sandwich is our knee.
So imagine if the bread was smaller than the ham, right? And you've got ham that's sticking out the edges of the sandwich.
Ham sandwich.
Right?
Gotcha.
So that's not how your meniscus should be. The meniscus is the same size as the bread, as the sandwich. Mm-hmm. But you can sometimes get this excess meniscus. So a bit of the deli meat is now outside of the sandwich.
That's not good.
And when the joint bends, right, so it opens, that bit of ham then folds in on itself. So folds in half, and then the knee joint closes. So you've gone from having essentially one layer of meniscus to two.
Because they've stacked, they've folded in half.
It's folded in half, right? That little excess flappy bit that was hanging outside the sandwich folded back inside the sandwich. And obviously your knee can't handle double. You can't just put an extra layer of meniscus in there. So that's that locking out that Joe's talking about. And sometimes people have this injury like the first time it happens, and they'll, if it's your lateral meniscus, it'll happen with an external rotation sort of position with your knee bent. So let's say like butterfly guard or X guard or sitting cross-legged. And it'll happen, it'll fold in, and you'll be like, oh, fuck. And then you'll straighten your leg, and as you straighten it, it kind of like squishes the flap back out of the knee, and it goes thunk and pops back out, and you're like, oh, thank God. So that's what Joe was talking about, that it locked out for 11 days. Like this flap would have folded in, and it just stayed stuck in his joint. So he wasn't getting that relief of it popping back out. So some people might have this injury, this bucket handle tear, and it occasionally pops in and out. Typically surgery is, you could then already go the surgical route, but the surgery typically happens when it folds in and refuses to pop out. So, what Joe's talking about, and then he had to have the surgery. The surgery, you have two options. You have the option where they unfold the flap and then they stitch the flap down onto whatever the bone, or I don't know exactly where it stitches to. So they'll stitch the flap down to essentially stop it from folding back in again, or they'll trim the flap off. So they'll cut it out and remove it. So that little bit of meniscus that had been smushed outside the sandwich, they cut it. So now the ham is flush with the edges of the sandwich again. Okay, so it can't happen again. There's no flap to fold anymore. So I had this surgery twice, both lateral on my knee. So the outside of my left knee, the outside of my right knee. I had the meniscus removed. Like Joe said, this is less problematic because you then can't have this injury happen to you again, because the meniscus, well, you still have meniscus, it's just much smaller now. There's not enough of it. There's no flappy bit to fold in. However, it does create problems later on in life. And quite ironically that Joe sent this question in, I had an MRI last week for a different issue in my knee. And one of the things they said was, the meniscus is really small, which is obviously due to the previous surgery, which is now, a decade ago. But they said something along the lines of, your knee has a lot of wear and tear for someone your age, which it doesn't faze me that much. Like, I mean, I don't sit at a desk all day. Like I put a lot of load through my knees. So it doesn't bother me, but yes, it can create problems later in life. Unfortunately, Joe, to be the bearer of bad news, I have not really come across people in the jiu-jitsu world who have had their meniscus repaired instead of cut off and not have it happen again. You're a physio, so you know the amount of dynamic movements we do in jiu-jitsu, the amount of awkward load we take through our knees and ankles and hips, and, way that people can be pushing and pulling and that load goes to your knee. Just the reoccurrence rate, in my opinion, is pretty high. I don't mean as in that means you'll get back on the mats and a month later it goes again. I mean, Aaron, one of our brown belts at the gym, he had his repaired, and I think it lasted like 3 years or something, 3 or 4 years before it went again, and then that next surgery.
Has major issues with it all the time.
Well, that's his other knee now. But then,
shit!
Yeah, but then this meniscus he had repaired.
Then that's his good knee, right?
Yeah, the good knee would now be the one where he had the flap cut off.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those ones that if if you, okay, obviously I'm not a surgeon or a physio, but if you were asking me this question as in you don't do jiu-jitsu, somehow this injury happened and you're not going to go back to doing jiu-jitsu, it'd be like, oh, repair it. But I think repairing it for jiu-jitsu, and if you're going to continue to train jiu-jitsu, is like, I don't know.
Just buying your time until the next surgery.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm wrong for your case, Joe. And again, you being a physio, you know a lot of the preventative work you can do to avoid this sort of injury. But I'd also be curious to know if it was your medial meniscus that you had done or your lateral, and how did it happen as well. But yeah, it's a relatively common injury in jiu-jitsu. As far as knee surgeries go, it's relatively simple. It's nothing compared to like an ACL or something like that. But yeah, that's what I had done, Joe. I had both of my lateral meniscuses removed, not removed the whole meniscus, but the flappy bit removed. I've never had an issue since. I've had other issues in my knees that have nothing to do with the meniscus, but you are correct. It can cause issues later on in life. Recent MRI, and I'm 36, right? Recent MRI said there's a lot of wear and tear in my knee for someone my age. In saying that, I also have a student who's 30 and needs a full hip replacement.
True.
Right? So and that's not even due to jiu-jitsu. Like, he trains jiu-jitsu, but he would have been having a hip replacement regardless. It's just because he trains jiu-jitsu and he's a brown belt, he's probably looking at that hip replacement when he's 30 instead of 40.
I think that original hip injury occurred at white belt.
Oh, him. Really?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so it happened at white belt and he just kept on keeping on all the way to brown belt, and now it's caused him too much street drama.
From what he said though, like he's
got shit.
He would have
anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it was not a matter of if, it was when.
Yeah, instead of happening at 30, it might have happened at 40 or 50 or something. Yeah. But the jiu-jitsu was.
But I said to him, I would argue that you're going to recover from a hip surgery at 30 better than you would recover from a hip surgery at 50.
Very true.
Right, like you get to a certain age.
That's a silver lining, bro.
That's a silver lining, bro.
But when he is 50, it might be even. I don't know. Once it gets replaced, fuck it. Anyway.
But yeah, Joe, thanks for the question, man. I hope your rehab goes well. Do the rehab. Take your time when you get back on the mats. Yeah, avoid the positions for a little while that put a lot of load on the whether it's your medial or lateral meniscus. I hope the repair holds. But yes, that is my experience with the injury.
Yeah. Let us know how you go, Joe. And thanks for the question. Next question is from Riley, and this is a bit of a fun one.
Hello, this is Riley from California. Love the podcast. I want to know, what is your favorite no-gi attire? Are you spats guys? Do you like shorts, long sleeves, something flamboyant? Let me know.
Adam is definitely a flamboyant spats guy.
I love that question, especially because how it starts. Like the first two words, I thought it was like a bot, like reading it. It was like, hello, love the podcast. Like it sounded like
an AI voice.
Yeah, it sounded like an AI voice. Thanks for the question, Riley. I'm like I hate not all the flamboyant rash guards and that, but I'm not into that sort of stuff.
Such a boomer. You're such a boomer, dude.
Why? Like, why do I have to wear something that looks like...
You don't have to wear it.
Looks like vomit to look at.
You don't have to wear it, but just don't be critical of those that want to express themselves by wearing different no-gi attire.
Man, look, there's no buts about it. If you're wearing a T-shirt that's shit, I'll tell you that's a shit T-shirt. I'll also tell you if it's a good T-shirt. I'll just let you know straight up.
Okay, well, you've never said anything about any of my T-shirts, so I'm confused.
I like your Vantage shirts. They're nice.
Yeah, okay.
I went through a little bit of a phase of wearing spats, but I don't particularly like them. I just don't.
You sometimes wear them, yeah.
Yeah, very rarely. I think also, I'm not ripped with 2% body fat, so like spats are just not very like comfortable. Like I don't find leggings comfortable. I'm not one of those people who I don't have the physique to go for the whole like skin tight rash guard look. You know how some like for example Yali, one of the guys in the gym, is very low low body fat
The
percentage.
dude's jacked. Let's just say it.
Yeah. And he likes that super, like the rash guard looks like it's painted on, you know, whereas,
It might be.
you know, I wear not baggy rash guards, but definitely not like the super tight ones. Cause I mean,
Yours are like a more of a loose fit.
yeah. And it's not even necessarily because I'm self-conscious about not having a six pack. I also just don't like the feeling of, and I wonder if that's gone back to my younger days of where I grew up in Australia, an area called Byron Bay that's kind of known for hippies and smoking weed and all that. And then I grew up like
surfing,
surfing and skateboarding. So I always had like baggy clothes and like, you know, shirts that were 4 sizes too big for me and, you know, jeans that were massive and a chain connected to my wallet and
Parachute
all that.
pants.
Yeah,
and
that's
doing
right.
the hammer time.
So I'm not into.
You grew up in the 80s, right?
Yeah. So I'm not into the tight fitting stuff. So that's why I just don't really like spats. Maybe if it's really cold, but I don't know. I just don't really like them. They bunch my shit up too much. And then so it's even the same for the shorts, you know. So then my no-gi shorts, it's not like they need to be. They're not baggy like basketball shorts, but they're not like, for example, the shorts Craig Jones wears. I don't wear those no-gi shorts. They're super short.
They are
right?
short.
So I'm not into those. And if I were into those, then I would be wearing spats, right? Because they're super short. And then in terms of a rashi, I don't mind long sleeve or short sleeve. I'm happy with both. I actually am not phased either way, funnily enough. I don't really care. And then in terms of its look, same as my wardrobe, I'm more just sort of...
Boomer style, plain.
No, I just
plain and baggy.
I just don't need like you have this rash guard that has got
The scramble one.
this scramble rash guard.
It's like digital patterns.
Man, it hurts your eyes to look at it. It looks like if you're someone who wears glasses, it then is like you're not wearing your glasses. Or if you're someone who doesn't need glasses and you put your friend's glasses on, like. That's what it looks like. It hurts your eyes to look at it because it's like out of focus, but meant to look like it's 3D. And it like, I hate even, I mean, that throws me off. When you're wearing that and we're rolling, I'm like, man.
I'm moving around.
Yeah,
You're like, where is he? There's 4 of him.
Yeah, so I'm not, I don't mind
bro.
cool.
It is such a plain rash guard. It's so basic. Have you seen some of those crazy ones that people wear these days where they're like some crazy ass patterns? I'm talking like psychedelic patterns, like maybe they're like lime green with all this crazy stuff on them, or like the rainbow
I'm not
ones.
into it. But it's like, I mean, put it this way. This is probably the perfect way to describe it. If your rash guard looks like a rash guard equivalent of a tap out t-shirt, I'm not into it. Like the designs of tap out t-shirts and that are just so gross and cringe.
Tap out's so old.
I know it is, right? But I mean, it's like that first, people who know what tap out is, they know what I'm saying by saying a tap out t-shirt. It's a very particular style of design.
Yeah.
And that,
Like
if
that
it's
punk style,
if it's that on a rash guard, I'm not into it. But I'm not against cool, funny rash guards. And
Yeah.
you know.
I want more. I want more like wacky sort of rash guards and no-gi stuff. I'm into people like going ham and like, you know, getting these crazy patterns and just wacky colors and shit. Because there's something about a dude, like the 10th Planet guys are known for their crazy no-gi attire, right? There's something to be said about like a dude with just like unicorns all over, like pink unicorns all over the rash guard, and then just is an absolute killer. I think the dichotomy there, like the juxtaposition of on one hand, look what they're wearing is like this crazy stuff, and on the other hand, they're an absolute weapon. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. But Craig Jones has this rule when it comes to spats. I think he calls it the 4-layer rule. There needs to be at least 4 layers between your junk and my junk.
Yeah, it's the best rule.
So do not wear spats without shorts, guys.
Well, but like,
if you're a guy.
No, but hang on. Let me just flat out say, you know, that's just because they could have underwear spats.
Nah, man.
and
It's not
then,
good enough.
Like that would still be 4 layers. But my argument
good
is
enough.
like, I agree.
The underwear does not count as a layer.
Yeah, guys, you just can't wear spat. You can't wear just spats.
Nah, man.
Put some shorts over
you straight
that.
up can't.
Yeah.
There's some guys that do. I mean, I'm not going to not roll with them, but put some shorts on.
Yeah, but I'm a bit boring there, Riley. Like, you know, I like cool designs and stuff, but nothing, you know, I'm not going to be wearing a Spider-Man rash guard. Not that I mean, I would say it looks cool because I like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not going to wear it, and I don't know. I like it a bit more chill.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to expand my wardrobe. And you know what? While we're on the topic, I think that we should be able to wear pink gis.
No, you can't wear a pink gi.
All right.
Why back with the pink gis?
I have to keep like dropping it in, and eventually I'll wear you down long enough that you'd be all right, just you, and then be like, all right, just okay, you can wear it too. All right, everyone can wear it.
All right, guys,
no yellow gis.
You're now only allowed to wear pink gis.
Yeah. Some like programs for like women's empowerment in jiu-jitsu, instead of white belts, they get pink belts. Have you seen this?
No.
Yeah, they're like it's for like programs like, you know, women in jiu-jitsu, and I think Jess Fraser does it.
Right, with girls in gis.
I think so. I think I saw it, hopefully I'm right here in saying that it was her post where all the people that are trying jiu-jitsu the first time, they had like these really bright pink belts for them, and it looked sick. It was awesome. I want a pink belt. All right, so next question is from Dylan.
Before I ask my question, shout out to Nick P for putting me onto this podcast. Cheers, bro. It's been awesome for while I'm in the tractor. Sorry it's noisy, but I'll just yell at my phone. So my question is, for some of us who do not come from jiu-jitsu or combat sport acquainted families, we might find ourselves having to almost justify enjoying combat and fighting to a layperson, which is very difficult, especially if they have a strong negative view of combat sports, like my entire family. What's your advice for approaching these conversations when you have to be nice and can't tell them to just not get fucked? So, yeah. Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
I love the end there where he's like, where you can't tell him you have to be nice and you can't get fucked.
Yeah, you can tell that Dylan tried not to swear.
Yeah,
and then,
send it, bro.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Dylan gotten onto the podcast from our man Nick P from New Zealand. So that's an accent there. If people are a bit like, what's this? I can't understand this dude. No, his accent wasn't that strong. Yeah, Dylan, good question, man. How do you sort of explain what we do or why we do it to people who don't understand it, don't train it, or are anti it? So like a lot of things in my life, and specifically jiu-jitsu wise, I like to describe things in analogies. That's kind of my shtick. That's what I like to do.
Away we go.
No, but I think if you're trying to explain it to your family, you know, trying to get them on board with it, you know, you've kind of got to try put it in a different example that they'll understand. So one of the ways that I'll explain jiu-jitsu and the addiction of jiu-jitsu to people is I'll say something along the lines of, man, like if you have good training partners, it's not about like beating each other up. It's kind of like a real life version of a video game. So think back to when you're a kid and you're playing Mario Kart with your friends, and you know you're winning the race, but right before the finish line you get hit with a blue shell or something and they win. It's not like, you know, you'll be pissed off, but it's like that kind of pissed off, like, oh, let's go one more race, you know, like we go again, you know. And I find good training partners in jiu-jitsu, it's kind of like that. Like it's friendly competition. It's not about trying to hurt each other and beat each other up.
No, you don't want to hurt each other. You go out of your way not to hurt each other.
Yeah. But you know, if they get the better of you, it's, for me at least, it kind of feels like if I lose to a friend in a video game, you know, playing Street Fighter or something, and they beat you, you're like, motherfucker, you know, let's go again. You know, it's like that friendly, healthy competition side of it. You know, you can give other examples. I mean, I think one of the best ones to try to explain it as well to people who are anti it is you just preach the whole self-defense side of it.
Yeah.
And because jiu-jitsu compared, I don't want this to turn into a, you know, jiu-jitsu versus other martial arts, but it really is the differentiating factor between other martial arts when it comes to a self-defense point of view. Because if I get into an altercation with you and you know, square up with me like you're going to start boxing me, you know, like I can run away, right? If you pull out a knife, I can run away, right? But it all changes drastically if you tackle me or grab me or, you know, something like that. So what if, let's create this scenario where what if the altercation you're in is someone you don't want to hurt, right? What if the altercation is with a drunk uncle and you don't want to punch them in the face? Or what
drunkle.
Or a drunk. Okay.
Wow.
You get one of those, Kieren.
That was bad.
What if, I always tell this story. I was once in a situation where I was essentially having to break up a fight, but there was a woman attacking another woman, and I didn't like, and the woman who was the aggressor was my size. I'm 6'4", right? So a big woman. What was I going to do? Like, you know, the karate kick her in the head? Like, no, but jiu-jitsu allowed me to diffuse the situation by grappling and holding on without, you know, hurting someone, right? Or, you know, the other argument people always make is, yeah, but like you don't want to be on the ground in a self-defense situation. Yeah, no, but, you know, if the fact that I train jiu-jitsu and you don't, try hold me down. I bet you I can get up and run away, right? Like the fact that I know how to get off the ground, you know, so you can, Dylan, you can preach like the self-defense aspect of it, you know, as a why wouldn't you want to train it? Why wouldn't you want to have these life skills? Kind of the same way that no matter how much your kids don't want to go to swimming classes, you force them. Because, well, at least in Australia, right? I know some parts of the world, they're like, what? But you very rarely meet someone in Australia who doesn't know how to swim.
Who is Australian?
Who is Australian, who doesn't know how to swim.
Yeah.
Like almost never.
Well, there's school programs where you do swimming.
Yeah,
it's that important. It's like in our school.
Yeah,
programs.
because for those who don't know, it's something like 99% of the population in Australia lives within 100 kilometres of a coastline, right? If you look at the density population of Australia.
All on the coast.
It's all on the coast.
Swimming is a big part of the culture.
Yeah, so I could count on one hand the amount of Australian. I don't even think I've ever met an Australian who can't swim.
They probably wouldn't admit it.
Or they wouldn't admit it. You know, so you could, you know, it's like it's a life skill.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, man, in terms of getting them on board with how fun it is, like there's way worse addictions that you could have, you know, like it's a relatively healthy addiction. You have to do something physical anyway with your life. I've seen people have worse injuries than the most severe jiu-jitsu injury because all they did was sit at a desk all day and now they've got 3 bulging discs in their back.
Yeah, they need to get their discs fused and shit like that because their posture's bad and they sit down for 10 hours a day.
So I would prefer to tear an LCL in my knee like I did last week from training jiu-jitsu because especially as we age, shit's going to fall apart in your body regardless, you know. I don't know if that helps, Dylan. Obviously, it's a bit more...
You know what?
Open.
Just send them this podcast. Yeah. If you want to convince your family, get every family member you know, and this goes for everyone out there, get every family member you know to listen to every single episode of this podcast.
Write a review.
Write a review.
Join Patreon.
Follow us on Instagram. That's how you do it.
Hopefully that helps, Dylan. But yeah, I guess it depends, you know, it'd be an interesting conversation to have in person because, you know, I'm sure maybe you're listening to this and you're like, man, I've told them that and then they said this and like so
we need a blow by blow. We need a counter arguments. Let's set up a debate.
Actually, can you have a conversation with your family, plant a little recorder,
legally record it,
record the whole conversation, and then send it to us.
And we will do a breakdown analysis on it. I wrote out some points for this and this is a hard one.
Is that all you wrote?
No. I wrote a bunch of other stuff, and I thought that was funny. It's hard to explain this. Like, it's hard to explain the value of jiu-jitsu to someone that hasn't tried it. And I think that you find this a lot with people that, you know, don't really traditionally fit the jiu-jitsu mold because it's a type of person that jiu-jitsu attracts normally, like the standard, the average jiu-jitsu goer. But then when you find someone coming into jiu-jitsu that doesn't fit that mold, it's really interesting to see, like, after their first class, it's like their eyes light up and they go, oh my God, I didn't know it was going to be like this. Like, I was told to do this by, you know, maybe it was my therapist or maybe it was like this person or a friend of mine, but you know, it's not until after they're like, oh, I get it now. And it only takes like one session and then you understand.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously it's not going to be for everyone.
Yeah.
But, you know, nothing's for everyone. Like,
nothing's for anyone.
Yeah. So, but Yeah, I mean, hit us back with more info if you feel, Dylan. I'd be interested to see, like, is it just sort of like casually your family don't get why you do it? Do they passionately hate it?
Yeah.
Does it cause a rift within your family relationships because you train jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, we need to know why, what their position is. Is it like they're like, oh, why would you want to go cuddle with sweaty dudes?
Yeah, do they think do they think it's, in air quotes, people who say like, oh man, it's so gay. What do you like? Are they giving you a hard time like that? I mean,
or are they pacifists and they're like, why do you want to invoke violence in this world?
Yeah,
Then you can counter argue that knowing jiu-jitsu, you become a pacifist because you
unless you're Herbert Santos.
Well, yeah. What's that other guy that's like being called out from slapping everyone recently? He got banned from ADCC because
for slapping.
Yeah, he slapped this dude in the face. And
well, I know not the one that just went, the one before, Cyborg got disqualified for slapping.
No, this guy got permanently banned, and he's like some nobody on. He's an athlete. Obviously, he's a pretty good athlete because he was at ADCC. He lost his match to someone, and then he just flipped him off and slapped him. And he's getting in this Instagram war.
This wasn't the one where Murillo got banned because
no, it wasn't. I don't think so. I
didn't even hear about this.
This is a new one. I don't know. Whatever. I'm butchering this. Anyway, next question. This one is from Henri.
Hey guys, my name's Henri. I'm a white belt training down at Absolute MMA in St Kilda. Love the podcast and just wanted to ask if you could have dinner with 3 combat athletes, who would they be and why?
Henri, good question. And shout out to Absolute MMA, Lachlan Giles' gym.
Yeah, nice, man. You're in very good hands down there.
Esteemed company.
Yeah. No, awesome.
Not like the scumbags we have up here.
Maybe we'll get to roll next year, Henri. I was speaking to Lockie. I believe this is public information now because it's at least on his and Livia's Instagram. Livia's pregnant with their second child. And I was talking to Lockie the other day and I said, man, I'll try and make it down because I think they're having a girl. I think she's due in May, I think. I said to Lockie, man, I'll try and get down before she's born because obviously your life will get a bit, turned upside down.
When are you going? I'll go with you.
Yeah, I don't know, next year. But
that's it. Beyond Jiu Jitsu Podcast is going to Melbourne.
But I say it to Lockie all the time. Yeah. I mean, I've
set a date.
I moved back from Brazil like 6 years ago. And I've trained at Absolute once since I moved back.
Set a date. Let's go.
And when Lockie was here a few months back, I was like, man, this is the first time we've seen each other since 6 years ago. Like,
we should go in March. Let's go in March.
All right, we can go in March.
So I leave in April. So
let me find out what's going on with my knee surgery next week.
Don't worry about that. We'll go in March. Book the flights.
Yeah, good
Your
question. You go first, kid.
Okay, so I cheated with this one. I found this so hard. I was like, only 3? This is bullshit. So I mean, I'm going to narrow down my 3 at the end because, I'm a man of integrity. So I will narrow it down, but I want to talk through my, who I chose in general.
Yep.
Okay. So for BJJ, now this changes all the time. Because I try to think, who are my favorite grapplers at the moment or who would I most want to talk to in grappling? So if we're talking about my 3 in BJJ, they're all from the Danaher squad, the New Wave rather. Is Gordon Ryan, don't hate me, I'm a fanboy, John Danaher and Giancarlo Bodoni. But in thinking about that further, I'd probably just narrow it down. Now, he said athlete, so I don't know if John Danaher counts as an athlete. If we're really playing it by the rules, he did say 3 combat athletes, and technically Danaher's a coach.
Cross him off the list.
So it's going to have to be Gordon Ryan out of those 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, MMA. So I went to MMA next. I would go with Israel Adesanya. So I think he's a legend. I think he's funny. He'd be, he'd have a lot to talk about in terms of like marketing yourself because he's a brilliant marketer. He's, got an awesome YouTube channel. So there's a lot we could talk about there, as well as talking about his experience in UFC, being like the superstar that he is. I'd like to talk to Volkanovski as well, who is the Australian UFC champion, or Michael Chandler. So there was a toss-up between those 2. And again, similar Michael Chandler, I just think he's like really entertaining. And then I also floated the idea of Mike Tyson. Now I put Lex Friedman in there, but he's not really an athlete, but he is a black belt, but he's not really a combat sport athlete, like a professional. And Tyson counts, but he's retired now. So here we go. So mine would be number 1, Gordon Ryan. Number 2, Israel Adesanya. And you know what? Number 3, fuck it. I'm going with Mike Tyson.
And why those 3?
Oh, okay. So Gordon Ryan, I'd want to talk to him about like obviously jiu-jitsu technique and just pick his brain. And I think he'd be interesting. And it would be interesting to sit down with the guy and see what he's like outside of his persona. Like I've heard him on Joe Rogan, but that's still like a public forum. And he's totally like himself because it's hard to maintain this persona for 3.5 hours with Joe Rogan.
Not if you're a psychopath.
Well, I don't think he is. And he wasn't like, he's a different person when he was on the podcast. Like he was really respectful. He was really like mature and he spoke really well. And I would like to sit down with him and just see what he was like in person outside of the, you know, the lights and the glamour and the screens. But like what he's like behind the screen is different to who he is in person. And, you know, it's pretty evident that he's putting on at least somewhat of a persona and a character. And, you know, all the top professional athletes these days that market themselves in combat sport do something along those lines or have some like shtick about them or some angle. And why I would want to sit down with Israel, I think I already explained that, to talk about like the way he markets, and obviously he's very like one of the best fighters in the world. And I'd say Mike Tyson because fuck man, he's an interesting cat. He's had a wild life. He's really hard to understand on podcasts. Like I find it difficult because I'm a little bit hard of hearing. So he's really like soft spoken and he sort of like his words sort of slur a little bit when he speaks. So I find it hard to really understand him. But despite that, I'd love to just chat with him and talk with Tyson. Why not?
Yeah.
What's yours?
So my 3 is Mike Tyson is the
bullshit.
The first
Have you read his biography yet or what?
No. So a while back we had an episode being like talking about.
Oh, Mike Tyson had a biography.
He should have an autobiography. He's had such a crazy life. And then we're like, wait, he's got 2 of them. Yeah. No, I've never read them, but yeah, for the reasons that you stated, he's just had a very interesting life. You know, he's had a lot of adversity in his life, a lot of success in his life, a lot of failure in his life.
And then a rebuild.
And, you know, he's had, you know, tragic things happen in his life. And I just think he's a very interesting person that would be amazing to sit with and talk to. And yeah, so Mike Tyson is definitely up there. I actually have no jiu-jitsu guys on my list at all.
I thought you might do that.
Kieren, I'm leaving the podcast. So I don't really like jiu-jitsu anymore. No, I think for me, I've done it. Like I've spoken to so many of the big names in jiu-jitsu. I don't mean that in a wanky way. I just mean I've been in jiu-jitsu for a long time, and you know,
you've already had dinner with all of them.
Yeah, kind of.
That's what you're saying.
So yeah, Mike Tyson. The second is Jordan Burroughs.
The wrestler.
Yeah, who's like 2012, I think, Olympic gold medalist, 6-time world champion in wrestling, one of the best freestyle wrestlers. That would be more to talk to him about. That would be more one of those, I don't know anything about him as a person. It would be more just to talk to him about wrestling and, you know, and wrestling in the Olympics and, you know, that would be more... Not essentially like, well, kind of. I just want to have a private with him. It just happens to be over dinner, I guess. Like I'd just like to talk to him about wrestling and training and
Jordan. Now that you finish your steak, let's do some drilling.
Yeah. Just wrestling mentality. You know, and yeah, it's just one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And the third one, I was stuck between 2. So one would be Khabib. Because he just seems like a...
Because he just smash.
Yeah, because he just smash. I don't know. He's kind of like the newer version of GSP for me. Like GSP is in like, he didn't trash talk and he was always really respectful and whatever. And Khabib's kind of like that, but obviously his English isn't that good. But
it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. So I'd just like to talk to him, you know, and I've read stories or heard podcasts of other people talking about what it's like now training under Khabib, like Khabib as a coach. And so I just think he would be...
he's crazy hardcore as a coach. I've seen some videos where he's like telling people, it's like, get the fuck back in there or get your plane back to Russia.
Yeah.
He's like, holy shit.
But the other one that I was torn between was, and I've written this down because I'm probably not going to pronounce it correctly.
This is 4. You cheat.
is
Cheat.
excuse me.
Hey,
1,
hey,
2,
hey, hey.
3, 4,
Whoa.
5, 6, 7. You had 8.
Whoa. I narrowed it down. Go on. What's your bonus one?
Is
This isn't dinner though. This is a coffee.
okay.
Who would you go to coffee with?
Is
You've blown your chance for dinner.
Tarek Hamedi from Saudi Arabia. He is the guy who in the Tokyo Olympics got disqualified in the karate gold medal match.
Yeah, I saw that
for kicking
recently.
too hard. Like
Because he knocked the fucker out.
Yeah,
it was great.
Yeah, and it was a whatever the Japanese word they use for it. It's considered a whatever foul.
Yeah,
and disqualified him. So the dude who got knocked out got the gold, and
it's ridiculous.
And Tarek got silver.
Now I looked into why he was disqualified and why that's a thing. Because apparently in points karate, if you can't control your power, it's seen as a negative.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to control yourself. And
so in other words,
ridiculous.
just fake getting knocked out and you win.
Yeah, you just pull. Like,
So in other words, So what I'm saying is, in other words,
right,
you just go do a crash course with the Brazilian, Italian, French, whatever football team, as in soccer. Learn how to take a dive, and all of a sudden you let someone kick you, you take a dive and you win.
And you're a gold medalist.
And it would be more just sort of to talk to him about, hey, has it? Because I kind of, when I started martial arts when I was younger, started a martial art that was a lot more of that sort of just like fakey martial art, and then went into more
Aikido.
Hapkido, same.
Whatever,
right?
Did you or did you not have to wield a sword?
Yeah, but I split them into combat sports and martial arts.
Yeah.
So I started in a martial art, but then went into combat sports, went into Muay Thai, and then jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And I would more just to talk to him, be like, hey, has it changed your opinion about karate or martial arts, combat sports? Like, because for me, when I found Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu, I was like, oh, this is fucking real. Like, this is actual combat sports. You're actually punching, kicking, grappling, submitting, and there's none of this like pulling your kicks and stuff. And I'd be interested if that's changed his opinion about the sport or combat sports as a whole.
Yeah, and if you don't know what Aikido is, just check out McDojo Life.
McDojo Life.
It will show you.
Aikido is Steven Seagal. That's what Aikido is.
Yeah. Aikido is very interesting. There's one they posted today of this recording, and there's this like old dude. I mean, they're all like this, but there's this old dude. He's like 70, and he's got these young guys, and he's just like throwing them with his force. Like they come up behind him and grab him, and he just like puts his arms up and force, like using fucking Star Wars level force field, just throws them, and they're like and they're tapping out and shit. And it makes me wonder what motivates the young guys, right? Surely they know that it's bullshit. What motivates them to do this? Now,
it's peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
It's like
it is peer pressure. It's got to be. It's got to be like they don't want to embarrass this guy. I've spoken about this before, but it's worth repeating very, very quickly. There's a guy on YouTube. He used to be an Aikido black belt, and he realized that it's all bullshit, so he came over to jiu-jitsu. And he like tried out a bunch of martial arts, settled on jiu-jitsu, right? And he's spoken about it in the past. He was one of the dummies that pretended. And he said, like, there's this guy, this super high level Aikido master that came in from Japan, and he was the demo. And the Aikido master held his hand over the dude's face and was like, oh, try and get up. And then he, got up and he said, no, you have to try and get up this way. And then he realized, oh, right, I'm meant to not be able to get up. And he was so peer pressured. He didn't want to embarrass this like uber Japanese master. So he pretended that he couldn't get up. And he even said like he knew what he was doing. And that at that moment, that's when he realized, oh no, what have I dedicated the last 10 years of my life to? This horseshit.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
But yeah, Henry, thanks for the question. If you happen to watch, little segue here, if you happen to watch the podcast episodes on YouTube opposed to Spotify or whatever, now from this episode on the new channel or not?
From this episode.
Yeah, so
we forgot to talk about it at the start.
We should have spoken about it at the start. We'll speak about it at the end. Anyway,
subscribe to our YouTube.
Yeah, so previously the episodes have been hosted on Kieren's YouTube. It's been a lengthy process. They've been migrated onto like its own YouTube channel now, the Beyond Jiu Jitsu Podcast YouTube channel. So if, Henry, you happen to watch the episodes there, I'd be interested for you to comment your 3. Well, anyone can comment the 3 people they would like to have dinner with, but you asked the question, so you're the only person who gets who would you have dinner with? What 3 combat athletes would you have dinner with?
Yeah, I'm actually interested to see what other people would choose, because I think you know, I spent a little bit of time thinking about it, but the more that I think about it, I could pick up another 3, really.
Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Undertaker.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks for that, Henry. Next question is from Aaron.
Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure listening to the podcast. I really appreciate your insights. Wanted to ask a quick question here in regards to learning, and I suppose more specific to learning in concepts. I'm one of those guys who can get to the end of the movie and forget the whole premise. So sometimes when going through your typical drilling, learning a move, getting towards the end of the session, I might forget some of the steps at the beginning. Want to obviously develop my game as sound as possible and really trying to figure that out. Any tips on best ways to learn? I know that you guys talk about journaling at the end of your sessions, writing down what you learned in that lesson, but by the time I would get to that point, I'd forget a lot of that. So any tips here, guys? Appreciate it as always. Cheers.
Awesome question, Aaron.
I mean, he forgets what happened by the end of the movie. I forgot the question.
That was a good one.
Yeah, whatever. Dunkel. Isn't that what the
he said? Drunkle.
Yeah, no, good question, Aaron. Yeah, so, okay, if we take journaling off the table because you've kind of forgotten by the time you get there, well, the next best would be, is your instructor cool with you like videoing when he's filming the techniques, so then you could watch it after, you know.
Bro, have you read my points?
Our gym, for example, we have on our website, we have a portal that our members can log into, and not every single class is recorded and put up on the website, but multiple techniques are recorded and put up onto the website. So, you know, that's a very niche sort of thing. It's not like every gym is going to do that. But essentially imagine like if you've ever seen MG in action or something, it's like that, but just for our students, right? It's
funny. My point was literally advantage. We have a video library where all the techniques are taught in the class, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
But aside from those, conceptually, right, this is going to be a tricky one because I know nothing about the way your instructor teaches. I like to teach a lot conceptually, and the reason I also like to teach with concepts analogies is because if you can find a way that someone can associate something in jiu-jitsu that is abstract or difficult to understand,
and relate it to something they do understand.
That's right. It then makes it almost concrete, you know. So like I'll give one, I don't know, this is one I say to people that falls on deaf ears in where our gym is located, but I talk about sometimes your ability to, you know, if you're on mount, how you maintain that position and move. And I was like, has anyone ever ridden a horse? And no one in our gym has. But if you have ever ridden a horse, you would know that you can't just passively sit on a horse. As the horse moves, like you'll get bounced off the horse. You can't just passively sit there. You literally have to like move your hips like in sync with the horse moving up and down.
Yeah, it's like riding a bull, right?
Yeah, right. It's like, it's not like...
That's more familiar to most people.
Yeah, you know, or even surfing a wave. If you just passively stood on a surfboard, like, no, you have to actually move with the undulating water going up and down and whatever, right? So, you know, and sometimes if I say that analogy, you know, people go like, oh yeah. Or if you can find, you know, you're doing a movement and you say, man, it's literally, you're doing the exact same movement as kicking a football. And people go, oh my God. Like,
is that when you're teaching that we have to kick them in the face when they're down?
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what's called a soccer kick.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But you know what I mean? Like, so if you can find some way to marry it to something that is completely outside of jiu-jitsu but so second nature to you, then it becomes almost autonomous and it completely makes sense. As far as concepts, it's going to be hard because if your instructor doesn't teach concepts and you're not at the point to understand things to come to the conceptual conclusion on your own, it's going to be difficult. However, you might just... And this is also why, when we've spoken about why these new young guys are getting so good so quickly, and I've said, in my opinion, it's due to them having a fundamental conceptual understanding of positions and, techniques and whatever, that on a base level, even if they don't know all the intricacies, they just know, the need to know concepts of the position. It carries them a long way, like I don't know, if I said to you, Kieren, like, okay, all I need you to know, you're cooking this chicken dish, right? And all I need you to know is that fundamentally I actually don't know what the temperature is internally of chicken when it's not considered raw anymore. I don't know what that is, but you know how like chefs will use a thermometer, right, to put it into meat. If I just said to you, Kieren, here's what you're cooking, just as long as conceptually and fundamentally you know that the chicken can't be pink and it needs to hit this temperature, and you're good, right? Like, you might fuck up a whole bunch of other stuff, but you ain't serving anyone raw chicken.
Yeah,
right?
I might accidentally piss in the pot, but like,
yeah.
it just because it's urine doesn't mean it's not cooked. Yeah. So we're going to be safe.
And so, let's take when people are first getting into leg locks and heel hooks, and and it's like, okay, well,
about the knee line.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of me teaching you every single leg lock escape, which I don't know, nor does anyone in the world know every single technique, right? But if I can just get through to you that, hey, conceptually, like I often explain it like this: if your leg's trapped, it's like, you want to keep your legs straight, right? And clear the knee line. Because if it's like a nail that's been nailed through a board and then bent over, it's like, as in your leg's bent, you then can't pull it out, right? Your leg needs to be straight like a nail so you can pull it out. Conceptually, you need them below your knee line, straight leg, pull the nail out of the bit of wood. And you'd be surprised how some people, students who know nothing, like they don't even know what a heel hook is, yet you tell them that, like, hey man, you don't want to be caught in leg entanglements, straight leg, get your knee line out, and that takes them a long ways. Other concepts like, half guard, you don't want to get cross-faced and you want to be on your side. Obviously, there's always exceptions to the rule in jiu-jitsu. So what might benefit you if your instructor doesn't teach in this manner, you could just, ask them, if they could give you like
what if they could just teach a bit better? Or?
Yeah, just be better, bro. No, but you might ask them like, oh, what's like one fundamental thing that you think super important? So, maybe you're learning an armbar and you say like, oh coach, what's like one concept, what's one crucial detail or something, or what's, and they might tell you, that your hips need to be up under the shoulder, or they might explain to you the concept of understanding the orientation of the hand and wrist dictates the orientation of the elbow and whatever. And even if you forget some of the other details, at least that is going to help. And so going back to the knee line thing, what if I'm attacking leg locks? I might not know all the perfect entries and ways to expose the heel and whatever, but if I know, hey, I need to stay above their knee line, it's already going to keep the ball in my hands or in their half of the court, and that's already better. So it's a hard one to answer, unfortunately, because it does depend a lot on how your instructor teaches. But yeah, if journaling's off the table, is there an option to record the techniques so you can watch them back when you've got a fresh mind on a different day? Okay. Or ask your instructor if there are some key concepts that they can pass on to you. Because if you're not if you're learning something new, chances are you're not going to find that concept on your own. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when I first started writing down all the techniques that we covered, I used to struggle with remembering them to get to the point where I'm writing them down. I used to remember the first one and the last one, like recent, like the first one, last one, and that's pretty much it. So I learnt I came up with these techniques that helped me to remember them until the end of the class. Because sometimes I do like the 5:30 class, and then between there's 2.5 hours or sometimes 3 hours plus, or sometimes I do it the next day. And that's a long time to remember like details of a technique. So what I do is I try and like break it down into steps, or if you teach it in steps, which a lot of the time you do, particularly for more complex movements, then I say out loud when I'm drilling, or even to my partner, I talk out loud the different steps. Like for example, like, oh, step 1, do this. And I literally say step 1, knee here, or step 2, left hand on collar. And I, whenever I write something down, I write it in the perspective of doing my, everyone's got their good side and their bad side. I always write it in the perspective of my good side.
Yeah.
So that way it's just default, and I always know that that's how it's written. So I find that helps to, like, if you say it out loud and come up with little like buzz phrases that you understand what they are, it helps you, it jogs your memory to when you get to the point of writing, and then you can write it out more efficiently.
Yeah. Or it could actually be going the other way. Maybe your coach is over articulating the techniques, giving too many details, which is, I'm not saying he is, but let's just cover this so we cover our bases. If that is the case, I mean, it's actually a mistake on the instructor's behalf. You can't give every single detail when you're teaching a technique. Like, yeah, maybe you go that route if you're teaching a seminar, like, you know, or whatever, someone's paid a lot of money specifically to learn one thing from you, but it's too much information for people to grasp. Yeah. So especially if that move is 100% new to them. So let's say if you were teaching an armbar and you rattled off 200 different details about the armbar, you know.
Man, I could rattle off at least 300.
Yeah. You know, there may be one or two that are new to me. So it's very easy for me to be like, okay, I'll just remember those one or two things. But if the armbar itself is new, I'm not going to remember 200 things, right? So if it's the case where your coach is over-articulating, he's giving too detailed of an explanation, which some instructors do. They like to flex how much they know. It's actually just showing how shit of an instructor you are. If that is the case, then you just pick 2 or 3 details and just remember those. You're making life too hard for yourself. If they're over-articulating and you're trying to remember every single detail, you never will. No one will.
Yeah.
If they're doing that, just remember 1 or 2.
And if you do forget a key detail, there's things that you can do to help out. Like, and that's the point.
Put your hand up.
Yeah, put your hand up and ask. But say you're at home and you're like trying to remember to write it down or whatever, or you're just trying to remember. You can look up a similar technique or the same technique on your video portal if you are at a gym that has one.
Do gyms do that?
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Submeta. Lachlan Giles has Submeta.
Oh, Lockie has Submeta.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, that's a different product. Like, that's an actual product with a...
Anyone can buy it, but it's freely available to all the students.
Members, right.
Yeah, all these members. And then they have to go through certain... Like, he checks their progress on Submeta, and they have to go through certain courses on there to get awarded belt progression and all sorts of stuff, right? Anyway, so you can do that. You can go through the video portal. You can look it up on YouTube, a similar technique, or you can, this happens to me all the time. I go to write it. I'm like, fuck, I forget this key detail. I know there's a key detail here, or I can't remember like this middle step or what to do with my hand. What do I do with my fingers? So then the next time I'll come in and I'll ask, oh, hey, Ads, you know that thing we were doing yesterday? What do I do here? Yeah. And then you're like, oh, yeah, you do that. I'm like, oh, yeah, fuck. And then
I'm like, what thing?
No.
And you're like, remember when we were here? I was like, no. What? Huh?
Right, we weren't even doing that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Tough one. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, if you've got some follow-up questions, yes, you shoot them through.
Okay, next question is from Dan.
Dan here. I just had a quick question about open mats. When should you start? Should you just dive in as a beginner, or should you have a pretty good idea of how to pass, maintain position, a few submissions that you can rely on, or just jump in a deep end and just focus on the fundamentals you've been learning? Cheers, boys.
Dan, I think I can answer this one pretty quickly. If I were to just put a line in the sand somewhere, and it's only because if I were to put it somewhere, I would say, wait till you're a blue belt. In the sense that if you were traveling, let's say, and so you're going to a different city or a different country, and you're just going to drop into an open mat, and you're like a 2-stripe white belt. I don't know, maybe not the thing to do. It's just, I don't know, like everyone's different. Some 2-stripe white belts are going to be more skilled than a purple belt, right? But, like some people are freaks. But yeah, if I had to put a line in the sand somewhere, blue belt is typically that rank of like, hey, I'm not a brand new beginner anymore. I've got a good fundamental understanding of what's safe, what's unsafe, the rules of the sport, whereas if you're a 1-stripe white belt or something and you rock up to an open mat and then you're trying to heel hook another white belt in the gi, and chances are the gym owner is then probably going to be pretty pissed off at you, right? But
Who would heel hook in the gi?
I don't know.
You've got to be at least a white belt to decide to do that.
But
inside joke, sorry.
But if it depends on the circumstances. Like I was a 0-stripe white belt when I went to my first open mat, but it's because I went with the black belt instructor of the gym that I was training at, and he was like, "Yeah, you can come with me." So I went with my coach.
You were chaperoned.
That's right, to another gym's open mat, right? And so it was fine, and everyone looked after me and whatever. But I wouldn't have gone there, by myself. I mean, it's that would be my answer to the question. Of course, always exceptions to the rules, but yeah, I wouldn't be wanting anyone to arrive because as a gym owner, if I'm running an open mat, which when I do, it's open to everyone from any gym or whatever. If I've got someone coming in who, doesn't even know how to hip escape and do an arm bar, it's like, man, you don't know enough for me to leave you unsupervised.
It's a liability.
That's right. And me to know that you're not going to get hurt and you're not going to hurt anyone else. It's the same reason why often I don't want to go into the whole not being allowed to roll until you've done X amount of classes, whatever. But I typically don't let people roll on their first ever class unless they're, I do it case by case basis. But usually
you let me roll.
But usually I'll say to people, I'll go 2 reasons why is I'll say, well, even though you're very fit, strong and healthy, and you can, do whatever movement, you're not used to trying to do that movement with 80 kilos lying on top of you. And it's just very easy to hurt your back. And all this strength we have in jiu-jitsu that we take for granted from a lot of repetition, like you get a brand new student and you have an hour class, and that whole hour class you're doing close guard. They're learning how to do an arm bar, learning how to do a triangle, learning cross collar chokes. The next day they'll tell you their neck's sore from holding their head up off the mat. They're not used to that. That's like strength we take for granted. So it's just a way of emphasizing that people can be fit, strong and healthy, but not necessarily in a jiu-jitsu way. So
keeping your guard closed. That's a common one.
Right. They'll have sore ankles.
Yeah, and they can't keep it closed. Like when someone stands up, it just pops open.
Yeah, they don't have the strength there. And so it's just easy for people to get injured on that. Them to injure themselves. Yeah. Not like my students, for example. I know that I could let any one of my students roll with a day 1 white belt, and none of my students are going to injure that white belt. But that white belt may very well injure themselves.
Bro, I'm going straight to knee on belly.
Yeah. The other thing I say to them is I go, and man, look, the most important thing for me, for you, for your time here today is for you to get a better understanding of jiu-jitsu, have fun, and go home uninjured. I said, if jiu-jitsu is something you want to do, there is plenty of time to get the shit beaten out of you and to beat the shit out of other people in a friendly way, right? People know what I mean.
Yeah, that reminds me of a young guy.
Shut up, let me finish.
Our gym.
Which
go on.
Guy?
Don't go.
No, well, I just wanted to finish the point by saying so if you're still in that phase of your jiu-jitsu, that's not rock up to an open mat material. Because like you said, it's kind of like they're a liability.
Yeah.
And me as a gym owner, if someone only had that level of experience, unless they're being chaperoned, or unless it's like one of my students has said, because this has happened, a student has said, hey man, can my friend come? And I'm like, oh, do they train? They're like, nah, they've only done 2 classes. But it's like my student is then going to look after them,
Yeah, of course.
So, but once you're past that, which for an arbitrary line, let's say blue belt, but obviously for some people it might be, maybe their gym doesn't give stripes and they're a 0-stripe white belt, but they've trained for 12 months or whatever and they're past that, then go for it. Yeah. That would be my answer.
I agree.
Who was the young guy? Sorry.
Where someone there was a fairly new white belt. I think we told this story before, and he was like, "Oh yeah, can you go hard? Or just don't go easy on me." And it's like, "Fuck, man."
Yeah, you were great.
You just
halfway through the ride. Okay, you can.
Yeah, we can go
slow
easy
it down.
now.
Yeah, go easy now.
Yeah. So I went to my first open mat. I think after about 6 months of training, I was like 3 or 4 stripe white belt. But it was an invite from a black belt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's not like I was chaperoned, but I felt like I knew enough to be able to roll safe. I was rolling with the purple belts,
but I guess it also depends. I can't recall in the question if it was asked a visiting open mat or an open mat at your own gym.
Just said open mat.
I mean, open mat at your own gym, I feel like you should be allowed to go.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of your experience.
Yeah.
If I was having an open mat at my gym and I had students who had only done 3 classes, I would explain to them, this is what an open mat is. You're welcome to come. But I said, there's no instruction. Like, I'll be here, but I'm not teaching. Like, I might be fucking stocking the fridge, or like the gym's open. But like, that's what, because they probably don't know what an open mat is, right?
Yeah.
But if it's at your own gym, I feel like you should be welcome to go.
Yeah, 100%.
You're paying a membership.
I think we made the assumption that it's like open mat, that
like
you're visiting an open mat. You're going to an open mat. If the open mat is at your gym, definitely go regardless. Cool. Okay, so we have one more audio question.
One more audio, and then if we got time,
we'll fit it in.
I just want to bring up this the question from the fellow who unfortunately was having.
Do you want to go with that one first? We'll go to the text question because we're going to fit all of them in, and then we'll go with the last audio question. How about we do that?
Well, I've got to find this one first, so why don't we go into let's do this. Okay. Just Kieren, play some hold music while I
dum 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 dum. I'm very tone deaf apparently, so I can't keep a tune. That was meant to be the Jeopardy waiting noise.
Was it? Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Jeopardy is a game show for those that don't know.
Yep, keep spelling facts. No one wants to hear. Go Kieren.
2 + 2 is 4.
Okay, yeah, all right. Let's do this one because I also said that I would answer it.
Okay, shoot. Let's hear it.
Okay, so this is from Jeffrey. I do 2 white belt classes a night, a week at my school, and the structure of the class is 30 minutes self-defense, and the last 30 minutes is drills on basic passing and defending. I need private lessons, but they charge $150 an hour, which is a bit much. And the instructor charges, hang on. And a friend of mine said his instructor only charges $50 an hour for privates. Will it be all right to do a private lesson with the other instructor to learn basics like passing guard, defending guard, blah, 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 blah. You know, my BJJ gym has other classes, but they mostly want white belts to do white belt classes to learn fundamentals. I haven't learned a thing like basics. I'm
just going to, before you answer, I just want to say I do not really like that format. I'm not a fan.
Of the class structure?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan.
Unfortunately, Jeffrey, my initial... and then because I said I'd answer it, he said, thanks, mate. It's just frustrating that I spend weeks doing white belt classes and not learning any basic moves. So unfortunately, Jeffrey, it sounds like the structure at your gym is fundamentally flawed. If they're supposed to be beginner white belt classes and you're not learning, they're not teaching you the basic techniques that they say you need to learn in order to be able to do the rolling and whatever. It almost sounds like that kind of, you know, when a job wants you to have like 3 years work experience to get the job, to get the entry level job, but you can't get the job, you can't get the work experience because no one will give you a job. And it's kind of like that sort of old thing. In my opinion, $150 an hour is a lot for a private unless you're having privates with, I don't want to say celebrity jiu-jitsu guys, but a bit more. I think it also depends where you are. I'm not sure where you are in the world, Jeffrey, but at least here in Australia, most black belts will charge $100 an hour. Some of the more credible ones, maybe like 120. And then once you start getting into, this guy's
80cc veteran. And
or whatever, maybe 150 or something like that. And then, you know, the superstars charge absurd amounts because they don't want to teach privates. Like if you tried to have a private with Craig Jones, he'd probably be like, it's fucking $3,000 because he doesn't want to teach a private. It needs to be such an absurd amount of money that justifies him doing it.
It's called pricing people out of the market.
That's right.
Like exactly. You're not going to say no, but your price is high.
So without more information, Jeffrey, it sounds like I'm not a fan of the gym that you train at. The structure just doesn't seem very indicative of actually developing your students. I mean, that sounds harsh to say. I'm just going off a message. It might be different if we were having a face-to-face conversation where I would have a bit more information, but it's just not adding up to me. If, it depends on the vibe of your gym as well. I assume if it's the sort of gym that is structured like this, they may not be a fan of you going and doing privates with a different instructor. That I might be jumping to conclusions. If they're cool with that, which in my opinion, you don't have to ask them, you're free to do whatever you want. There's nothing wrong with doing $50 an hour privates with your friend's instructor, but something's not adding up. That to feel like you need to learn basics, like when you're a white belt and you feel like you need to already be doing private lessons to learn basics, something's wrong.
Man, you need to I don't think you should go get privates from your mate's instructor. I think you should go join his gym.
Yeah, well, that's another option. Like,
out.
you know, I always say that gyms don't own their students. And if the gym is offering a shit service and a shit product, then go shop somewhere else.
Yeah. But something really doesn't sit right with me. I don't know, maybe this is my biased opinion, and feel free if you disagree with this. Look, I'm going to be controversial. I've been told I need to be a little bit more controversial.
Yes, you always want to sit on the fence.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit on the fence. I think that teaching self-defense jiu-jitsu is a fucking waste of time.
No, it's not.
I think it is. I think doing like 30 minutes of self-defense jiu-jitsu, like what does self-defense jiu-jitsu look like? Is it like, this is how you block a punch and then go to a takedown? This is how you, get out of a headlock. But that's just jiu-jitsu, right? If you know jiu-jitsu, if you've been training jiu-jitsu for 12 months, unless, like, notwithstanding like the whole dodging punches and stuff, you'll know how to defend yourself. Yeah. That is your self-defense.
Yeah, but you're also ignoring a couple of key points as to why me saying this as someone who doesn't teach self-defense jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I've never done it.
That's only because like it has its place is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't really teach a lot of it because I'm definitely more just focused on the sport side of jiu-jitsu. But let me tell you the value in teaching self-defense for jiu-jitsu. I think you, as someone who's coming from an athletic background, is taking for granted how like coordinated and how easily you pick it up. I don't think you've trained enough people or interacted with enough people that your jaw drops at how uncoordinated they are and whatever. So self-defense jiu-jitsu does two things. One, it allows people to learn fundamental body movements, not techniques, body movements that are applicable to jiu-jitsu, right? So for example, let's say we do some very typical basic self-defense move that is in jiu-jitsu, karate, taekwondo, Hollywood movies, whatever. Someone grabs you around the neck from behind and you do like lean forward and do a hip throw and throw them over you, right? Let you take someone who is absurdly uncoordinated, right? And man, some people are. I have students currently who I'll go, put your left hand there, and I go, that's your foot. Put your left hand there. That's your other foot. Put your left hand, man, like you crazy. So if you can't do that technique in that movement, ignore the word technique. If you can't do that body movement, how can I expect to teach you how to do a proper ippon seonagi or a proper ogoshi hip throw? Or, if you can't fall over safely when someone is doing some lame-ass self-defense throw, how can I expect to teach you to fall when someone does a, uchimata throw on you, right? Like, this is the value in self-defense, learning fundamental movements, right, that we take for granted as people who are already coordinated or whatever. So people who come to jiu-jitsu and they say, oh, I've never done anything like jiu-jitsu, but I did boxing. I go, man, you'd be surprised how much, like, you'll be fine. Just the fact that coordination, their base, their balance, footwork, like all that translates. But you'll have this experience one day. Once you start teaching more, you'll have a brand new person come in one day and you'll be shocked at how like things that we take for granted that we just do.
But why do these need to be taught under the pretense of self-defense though?
Because it makes zero sense. So going back to when, whose question was it about the learning? Sorry, was Aaron's question. Yep. And I said, I like to use analogies to make things relatable to something. it makes zero sense to someone who knows nothing about jiu-jitsu and has come into it for me to say, you do this when they hold your sleeve. They go, why the fuck would I hold their sleeve? It doesn't make any sense. Or you do this when they posture up. Why would they posture? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Or so they're going to step their left foot and you do this. Why would they? But saying like they're going to try to punch you in the face instantly makes sense, even if they've never been in a street fight. Oh, this person's like trying to hold you and drag you off. Makes sense to them. Doesn't have to have ever happened to them, but it's an instantly relatable, that makes sense to me. They're doing this because they're attacking me, but saying something like, you know, they're going to grab this, you know, cross collar grip and you've got to break that grip. They don't understand why, what's the problem with, why would they grab my collar and why don't I want them to grab my collar? So it doesn't resonate with them, the reasons behind doing the movements.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas self-defense, there's a reason why I'm doing this movement or technique. And so those two things together allow people to learn the body movements that are required. It's the same as how often do you ever really actually do, can happen sometimes, but a front roll is in a shoulder roll and a back roll in jiu-jitsu. Like that isolated movement, not very often, right?
No, front roll, barely ever, back roll sometimes.
Right? Yeah. But if you can't safely do a front shoulder roll and a back roll on your own in an isolated environment, how the fuck can I expect you to invert when you have someone's body weight on top of you and not blow out your neck and your back? Impossible. If you can't front roll and back roll, I'm going to find it very unlikely that you're going to be able to invert and do a bolo. So it's a fundamental body movement that you need to learn.
Right. So what you're saying is, and feel free to jump in if I got this wrong, you're saying that self-defense, teaching beginners self-defense jiu-jitsu in unto itself is a vehicle to get basic jiu-jitsu concepts and fundamental movements down, and you're using self-defense so that they understand in an everyday context why these movements are important.
Yes. It's very similar to why when you go to a learn to surf class that you literally
start on the beach,
paddle on the board that's on the sand, because you have to learn the movement. They don't just go, oh, well, why don't they just learn the movement while they're doing it on the wave? Because that's very fucking hard, right? Like you got to learn the fundamental movements before you can put it into, you know, and then you add the fact that jiu-jitsu is way more dynamic and complicated and doesn't make sense to people who aren't educated about it than surfing. Someone who's never surfed, they still understand like, well, there's a wave and I'm trying to catch that. But, you know,
I think I was getting hung up on the fact that like as a blue belt now, not saying that I know everything about jiu-jitsu, but I think that if I was to go do a self-defense jiu-jitsu class, unless it's an MMA style, like jiu-jitsu for MMA, which is, you know, different in my mind, I think that a self-defense jiu-jitsu class at this point would be a waste of time. And
it would 100% be a waste of time.
Therefore, I'm thinking, why bother with it?
Because it doesn't serve a purpose for you anymore, right? You've already, like this paddling and standing up on a board on the beach doesn't serve a purpose for someone who can already catch waves, right? Other than, you know, like doing self-defense now as a, you know, whatever belt you are, you might be a black belt. Yeah, you're still moving your body. You're still revising techniques, whatever. You're going to be helping lower belts and whatnot. But yeah, if you're just talking about it like, you know, you don't, let's say we skip it. Someone like you who's never done a self-defense jiu-jitsu techniques, but you train and compete in the sport of jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, you're already competent in self-defense. Like it doesn't, like you don't.
That's the frame of mind I came into this. I was like, well, why fucking bother with the self-defense? Why not just go straight to the competence?
Yeah. So obviously there's always going to be a bit of overlap. There'll be a bit of overlap where you'll reach your point. So even if you're someone who comes in green, uncoordinated, you've started with these self-defense, there'll be that transition period where you'll be feeling like, I don't need to do this anymore. This is a waste of time. And, you know, and then you'll get to a point where I don't want to say never do it again, but at least in my opinion with sport jiu-jitsu, that's where self-defense serves its purpose.
Right.
You know, and because it's also, look, sometimes you do self-defense workshops and we've spoken about this in other episodes, you're trying to just get some core bite-sized information across to people.
I mean, I've helped you film a self-defense workshop for beginners. So, I mean, thinking back to that, there's a lot of self-defense air quote concepts there that lead themselves into jiu-jitsu positions.
Yeah.
And I could see the link because I had enough jiu-jitsu experience at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. But you can't it's very hard for people if you remove that link.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted, right?
Yeah.
Like we take for granted how basic a hip escape is. Or front rolls are another good one. And brand new people come in and instructors just go, just follow along. And then some dude tries to do a front roll and they jack their neck and it's their first ever time in the class.
Yeah.
Like you don't sit there going, when do I have a front roll in jiu-jitsu? Why do I need this? Well, it's just
the movement. You need the movement. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And it reminds me of when I started jiu-jitsu, I had this mentality that you need to get fit to do jiu-jitsu, not do jiu-jitsu to get fit. And now that I've spent time in the sport, I realize how dumb that is. So I think maybe this is another taking for granted
You just learn so much here with me.
I learned so much in this. This podcast is not just a podcast. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And you're on it with us.
But yeah, Jeff, we got down a rabbit hole with your question. So I don't know, man, it's with that limited with the limited information you're giving us, like you also just casually said, I need to do privates. You mean as in they're saying you have to do privates.
Okay, if they're saying that to you, if your instructor is like, you need to do privates to progress,
be allowed, that's
red flag, fuck off, get out of there.
I would be bailing.
Yeah,
if that
100%.
was the case there. But
if you feel like you need to do privates because you're not getting enough out of these classes, I would want to know how long you have to do these classes for. Is it for the entire duration of white belt? Is it for 12 months? Because if you told me that I had to do self-defense jiu-jitsu and then drilling for 12 months, no rolling, before I was allowed to roll or progress or whatever, I'd be like, nah, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to Gracie Baja.
Yeah.
Like,
again, I don't want to like burst any bubbles, but limited information based just on that. If I had access to no more information, my opinion would be find a new gym.
Yeah.
But obviously that I may be jumping to conclusions. Feel free, Jeff, to come back with more information.
Yeah, and we'll cover it. We will cover it in like the next episode.
Yeah,
we won't
wait till the next Q&A.
Yeah.
And that goes for everyone's questions.
Yeah,
if you have a little follow-up sort of asterisk caveat you want to add in, let us know. But yeah, Jeff, hopefully that helps. And hopefully Kieren's learnt that self-defense does serve a purpose.
Yeah, I think I've come around to the idea for that purpose, for beginners in that case, I think it makes sense now.
But it's also self-defense regardless of what martial art or sport is teaching it. People also don't understand that self-defense it's something that only works against people who don't train a combat sport.
Yeah.
That's what it's designed for.
100%.
Because your typical self-defense technique that you learn in a jiu-jitsu class won't work against someone else who trains jiu-jitsu. That's why then you have that link to go into, well, this is why it wouldn't work, because this is why they want to grab your collar and this is why you want to break that collar grip. Like now we're going into this chess game of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And it's the same for self-defense is designed to work on someone who doesn't train a combat sport and they're trying to pick you up. If some dude's grabbing you from behind to assault you or something and he doesn't train jiu-jitsu, you're gonna be like, this is the self-defense technique you do. If some dude is grabbing you from behind to assault you and he also happens to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, what do?
You're fucked.
I could teach you a jiu-jitsu technique, but it's gonna be rough, bro.
You're already grabbing by the balls.
You're already starting at a disadvantage. Yeah. So people got to remember that when it comes to self-defense as well.
I've always wondered what would happen in a street fight scenario where two guys get into it. They don't know each other from a bar of soap, right? They get into it and then it becomes very apparent that they both trained jiu-jitsu. Oh, hang on. Would they stop with them? Whoa. Like maybe they're in a scuffle and then someone ends up on the bottom and all of a sudden De La Riva hook goes in. Yeah. Like, whoa.
They just stop and look at each other and just start making out. or one of them would be like, wuss. The other's like, wuss. Oh, so they
like two bodybuilders like protein, yes. Natty. All right, final question. Last one is from Andrei. Let's go with this question.
Hi guys, greetings from Romania. I am a 32 years white belt, which started about 2 months ago, and since then I very much enjoy your podcast. I think I listened to all the episodes. My question will be more on the conditioning side. So our instructor recently added rolling at the end of the classes, and I noticed I gas out quite quickly. I think 2-3 minutes in, or maybe one roll round, it's the most I can get. Then I'm basically gassed out. And I think one of the main reasons would be that I find myself thinking a lot because I'm not sure what should be my next move. And also I find myself applying force probably more than necessary. So the question would be, what do you think will be better, to either improve the conditioning or maybe try to improve the technique? Yeah, so that's it. Thanks.
Excellent question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. All the way from Romania.
Shout out to Romania. Yeah. So I can talk at length about the conditioning side of things, the strength, improving your gas tank and everything like that. But I think from the outset, you need to throw in this caveat. Anytime you talk about training outside of jiu-jitsu for jiu-jitsu's sake, specifically when it comes to strength and cardio, or S&C, strength and conditioning, you need to caveat it with, obviously, technique is always going to be the superior. As in, technique is always going to be more important than strength and more important than conditioning and any sort of athletic ability, right? And that's a given. And the example that we were just talking about, obviously, if you have someone that knows jiu-jitsu, the smaller guy beats the bigger guy. That's the funny thing. But as you always say, what if they both change jiu-jitsu? Who's going to win then?
Yeah, that's right. That's why we have weight divisions.
Exactly. The stronger guy.
Yeah.
The stronger guy's going to win.
Yeah, so as Kieren mentioned, you could speak a lot about different programs you can follow, we did an episode just a couple of weeks ago that was, top 5 lifts for jiu-jitsu.
117.
But my advice would be, well, firstly, don't be that shocked with yourself, Andrei. It's very common in the beginning. It's very foreign. But usually I'll just give you the benefit of the doubt. Assume you're a fit, healthy person. It usually comes down to a lack of being energy efficient, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even necessarily that the higher belts are fitter than you or stronger than you or whatever. Obviously, that may be the case as well. But it's usually just due to their experience, they're much more efficient with their energy. So, and that happens for 2 reasons. One, the lack of experience results in you finding yourself in multiple situations where you don't know what the appropriate technique is or the conceptual, goal that you're working towards is. So therefore you just resort to using the only other resources you have, which are your physical attributes. And they start to run out very quickly when they're being used in the incorrect application. What I mean by that is, you don't know what technique you're supposed to use. And if you did know the correct technique, you would be able to use some of your strength resource, for example, to use that technique, apply it correctly, and it's not going to cost as much strength and you'll progress. But when you don't know the technique, you're just spending strength. Like, you don't know, spend a bit of strength here, a bit there, a bit there. What the fuck am I doing? And then all of a sudden you've spent all your strength resource and you're gassed. But yeah, so that's one way. And then the inexperience, kind of often you see beginners having the wrong mentality about the round. So a jiu-jitsu match it's not a 100-meter sprint, right? Nor is it a marathon. Okay? It's somewhere in between. It's maybe like, if you imagine you're doing a 5-kilometer cross-country run. So it's 5 kilometers, a very difficult length to think you can sprint for 5 kilometers. You also can't just slowly jog for 5 kilometers because you're going to lose. So there's going to be periods of time where you are sprinting, periods where you're pacing yourself, but it's like cross-country. There'll be periods where you're going uphill, periods where you're going downhill, right? And you're going to approach that race based on the terrain in a different way. So there'll be periods where you are sprinting, periods where you have to slow down. And, like the bit in the cross-country race where you're going up a 40-degree slope is probably not the period of the race that you'll decide to sprint, right? It'll be okay.
That's when you pass everyone then.
Yeah, right? And so, the flat section might be the bit where you're sprinting to get past someone, or it might be the the portion of the race where you've slowed down to recover because you just came up that massive fucking hill. So you're, recouping some energy. So it's kind of like that. New people tend to just approach a roll as if it's a 100-meter sprint. Like it's 0 to 100 the whole time and they gas, right? Yeah. Even, you can't put, what's the marathon guy, Kipchoge, the guy who did the marathon in under 2 hours.
I know of him.
Yeah, I just can't remember. It's Kipchoge something. I can't remember his full name. But yeah, even he can't sprint for 2 hours. No one can sprint for that long, right? I mean, the longest you really sprint for is like 200 meters. The 200-meter race is still a sprint. I think once you get to the 400 and 800 in athletics, pacing starts coming into it.
Yeah.
Right?
400, 400, we're still talking like a sprint-ish, but it's not like 100. You're like a 90% sprint. 800, definitely strategic. Anything plus on that, very strategic in pacing.
Yeah. So that could be a factor as well, Andrei. So that lack of experience results in incorrect resource management. And that's usually why the gassing out happens. If you're not fit and healthy, like I said, if I just gave you the benefit of the doubt, said you're fit and healthy, if you're not, then that's okay, man. Like fitness is going to come with it. You know, I've got plenty of students who, when they started, after 2 minutes were gassed, and now they do multiple 10-minute rounds and they're fine. The fitness will come. If you are fit and healthy and wondering why you're gassing, this would be my assumption. Yeah,
definitely
efficiency is usually the thing.
I thought of an analogy.
Here we go.
So think of yourself as a car, right? When you're a beginner to jiu-jitsu, the gears of that car, it's a manual transmission. The gears of the car is like your levels of technique. When you first start, you only have available to you first gear. So you need to put in a lot of gas to get up speed, right? And speed is your output of jiu-jitsu, right? So the speed of the car is you actually doing something in jiu-jitsu. So in the beginning, you're like redlining it just to get like 40 kilometers an hour, right? As you progress in jiu-jitsu, you unlock more gears. So it's easier for the car to travel. Therefore,
without having to run at such high revs.
Exactly. And the higher revs you run, the more fuel you're going to use. The literal fuel in this analogy is your fuel, is your gas tank. Your gas tank. So the more efficient you get, i.e. you're able to change gears, and that is your technique, then the faster you can go with the least amount of gas used.
Yeah, that's all right analogy.
Fuck, that was brilliant.
It wasn't too bad.
Clip that. Put that on YouTube.
It wasn't too bad.
All right.
Yeah, but obviously I'll throw it back to Kieren. I can see on
got
his
like a
list,
whole page of fucking notes here.
Yeah, but he's got a few resources that you can look at if you're wanting to add supplementary training.
So now that we've got the technique efficiency with that capped off with that beautiful analogy, you're welcome. Let's talk about cardio for jiu-jitsu. So there's a few different types of cardio that you need to talk about, but I'm going to break it down into two main categories. You have cardio-based training, which elevates your base floor of cardio output, and then you have HIIT cardio, which talks about sprinting, makes you more efficient and makes you able to sprint harder for longer. Right? So let's talk about aerobic base first. When we talk about aerobic base, think about cardio output. You're going for a jog, a very light jog, a conversational pace. When you get to a certain threshold, you're going to chop from that conversational pace where you can pretty much do it all day. Like it's kind of like hiking pace. You can hike for hours and hours and hours without stopping at this zone. As soon as you step it up just that little bit and you cross the threshold, you get into the lactic acid zone and you can no longer maintain that pace for as long. So cardio-based training basically lifts the ceiling of that base, so your threshold is a lot, like in terms of heart rate, is higher. So heart rate is one way to measure this threshold, and it's called zone 2 training. So zone 3 is past the threshold. Zone 2, you're in conversational pace. So if you lift that ceiling, you can essentially maximize the amount of output you can operate at before you cross the threshold. That's important for jiu-jitsu, for those moments that you were talking about before when you're coasting. Like you can coast a bit harder than someone else can coast. So your coasting is their threshold, right? That's a good position to be in. So to get into zone 2, there's a quick formula you can do to figure out what your heart rate is at zone 2. It's 220 minus your age in years, and that is your maximum heart rate. So then you take 220, let's just go through an example. Mine's 220 minus 27 equals 193. That's my maximum heart rate. To figure out what my zone 2 is, it's 70 to 80% of that number. So 70 to 80% of 193 is rounded off. It's 135 to 155. So if my heart rate is in that region, I'm in zone 2. So the point of telling you this is a way you can improve your aerobic base or your zone 2 training is to do 90 minutes of cardio, whatever cardio you like. It can be swimming, it can be cycling, hiking, walking with a weight vest or a light jog, or even walking uphill, walking on the treadmill, whatever, so long as you stay within that 70 to 80% of your max heart rate. Do that. If
your max heart rate's 193, what happens if you go over it?
It's a very rough estimate. Rough estimate. But if you do get above your maximum heart rate, it can be very dangerous. That's why people that aren't fit, that's why they say always consult with your doctor before you do any, before you add anything.
Let me do a quick. So one of my most punishing workouts ever was in Brazil. I'm not going to tell the whole story now, but I was probably, what would I have been? I would have been close to 30 at the time.
Yeah. So 190.
So let's say 28, I think I probably was a bit closer to.
Okay.
So that puts me at 192.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I had this workout where I hit over 200.
Yeah.
For sure.
So to go over it in short stints is fine, but if you're very unfit and you're going well and truly above your max heart rate for your age, that's when it does become dangerous.
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, it would probably require you to have an underlying heart condition or something like that, but it can be it can be fatal if you push yourself higher above your maximum heart rate for too long.
Yeah, right.
That's why exercise can be dangerous. Anyway, so if you don't have a heart rate monitor, you don't feel like you have to go buy one, just do the talking test. So long as you can maintain your current cardio output and still maintain a conversation. So the analogy is like if you're on the phone, you should be able to maintain a conversation on the phone, but the person on the other end should know that you're exercising. They should hear it in your voice. Like, so not so conversational that you're la-di-da, like you should be huffing and puffing, but you're still able to talk, right? So that's aerobic base. That will address the aerobic base. Next thing you can do is interval training and cardio, circuit training, any sort of interval training. Depending on the interval, depends what it trains. So if you do interval training that's around 4 minutes, as in it's your like 90% maximum effort for 4 minutes straight, that will work your VO2 max. So that's really, really beneficial for jiu-jitsu athletes because VO2 max is a key contributor to your cardio output as well. And it's perfect time length for jiu-jitsu bouts because in a match, like you're not going 100% or even 90% for the whole 10 minutes. You're sort of...
you are in white belt matches at competitions.
You're holding on for dear life. But like you mentioned, there's ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But, the ebb on a world's match is probably 80% of both competitors' max, or like 7, depending on the match, obviously. I digress. So you can do that. Interval training, 4 minutes. So a protocol is 4 rounds or 4 minutes of 90% max effort. So by the end of the 4 minutes, you should be begging for it to end with full recovery in between. So 4 to 6 minutes in between the rounds. That's an excellent little workout. Or you can do HIIT, which is high intensity interval training. So we're reducing the interval, but increasing the intensity. And a really good protocol is called Tabata. For those that don't know, Tabata is 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for 4 minutes.
And it sucks.
It sucks. So it's 8 rounds total for a total time of 4 minutes. Now there's actually a really awesome playlist on Spotify, and I think it's literally just called Tabata songs. Yep. I got it here, Tabata songs. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, in the description of this episode. And the songs are 4 minutes. They give you a countdown, and it's a really easy way to track Tabata. Plays a song. It's all like mixed really nice. It's great. Or you can just go and download an app if you want to listen to your own music or whatever. There's 1,000,001 Tabata timer apps. Now, in terms of what you should be doing during those Tabata sets, you can do anything from like circuit training, like you can do kettlebell swings, you can do push-ups, you can do squats, you can do pretty much any exercise, but the most efficient things cardio-based. So I'm talking like aerodyne bike sprints.
Skipping rope.
You can do swimming. Well, swimming is a lot harder, but you can. Or you can do cycling sprints or treadmill sprints. So those combinations are probably the best. Aerodyne sucks, man. It is tough, but it's very, very efficient and excellent for jiu-jitsu because it incorporates both your arms and your legs.
Yep.
And finally, you can do circuit training. The circuit training example I have here is my personal favorite because it's the easiest to remember and it's the most fun. In terms of circuit training, it's called Lucky Sevens, and it's very simple. You choose 7 exercises, you do 7 rounds, and you guessed it, for 7 reps, and you go through and just do it for time. So an example one that I put together here incorporates push, pull, legs, core, and cardio. So the first exercise is explosive push-ups. Second exercise is jumping squats, then crunches, kettlebell deadlifts, kettlebell swings, kettlebell shoulder press, and the core exercise V-ups. And then just do a 50-meter little jog in between each round. Do that 7 times through for time. That should take you anywhere from 10 if you're very fit to 20 minutes. So anywhere within there, 10 to 20 minutes. Most people will fall around that 15 to 20 minute range. And of course, working on your mobility will make you more efficient, and that will save you energy as well. Thinking back to the car analogy, or as well as technique, the more efficient you are with your body movements, the more gas you're going to be able to save. Yeah. So that.
Or just buy an automatic car, bro, and fucking can ignore
technically
everything.
Still has gears.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So if you enjoyed that little write-up, I do have a BJJ Performance and Longevity instructional out with Jordan Teaches Jiu-Jitsu. When this episode comes out, just as a little shameless plug, we do have our Black Friday sale on.
Oh, yeah.
So check that out if you are interested. I'll put a link to that in the show description as well. But yeah, that's a wrap for this Q&A.
Yeah, what a good one, guys. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. Like we said halfway through, the YouTube episodes have moved on to a different channel. We'll put something on Instagram as well that reminds people of that and whatnot. But yeah, if you have anyone's question that we got to today, if you had follow-ups that you wanted to add more information, let us know and we'll get to it next recording. But yeah, already send questions for the next one. If you have anyone listening who would like a question answered, it won't be till episode 130, which is the next Q&A, but you can always send them through.
Please do.
Yeah, they sit there in our data bank. We don't delete them. We'll always get to them. So please send through any questions. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, much longer one. I think this will be the longest episode we may have done.
Longest episode we have done.
But they were all great questions. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure getting to them. And until then, enjoy your Black Friday deal. I hear there's a good instructional that you can get, right? Right?
The best.
The best. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.